So it all starts when this woman shows up at the Tungtun shelter, soaking wet, a little kid by her side, basically begging for a place to crash. The owner takes one look at them and goes, "Sorry, we're full." But Helen's been around long enough to know exactly what this greedy bastard actually means by that, so she pulls out a single silver coin and slides it over. And I swear this man's whole personality did a 180 on the spot. Suddenly there's plenty of room. He shows them to their room, says he'll go over the rules and fees tomorrow, and dips. The second they're alone, Helen turns to look at the boy, and just from the way her eyes land on him, you can tell this woman is carrying something absolutely devastating. The kid looks up at her with these big innocent eyes and asks where his mom and dad are, and Helen knows. She knows exactly what happened to them, and it's bad enough that she physically cannot get the words out. So she does what any exhausted, heartbroken adult does when a kid asks something they're nowhere near ready to answer. She lies, tells him he'll see them soon, that everything's okay, and to just go to sleep. The kid believes every word and is out cold within minutes, and then Helen starts coughing. Not a little throat tickle situation. We're talking blood. This woman has been running on absolute fumes this entire journey, held together by sheer willpower, and now that the kid is safe and asleep, her body finally lets go. She looks at him one last time, whispers her goodbye, and that's it. Gone. Dead in that room before morning even showed up. Rowan wakes up in the middle of the night and immediately knows something is wrong. The sheets are soaked red and Helen is just still. The shelter owner shows up with his mistress after hearing the commotion, and instead of having literally any normal human reaction to a woman dying in their building, these two are mostly just annoyed about the inconvenience. But then the mistress gets this look on her face. She's staring hard at Rowan, specifically at his light-colored hair, and goes, doesn't he look just like Pauline? And right on cue, Pauline walks in, same hair, same features. These two could genuinely pass for mother and son without anyone questioning it for a second. So this conniving woman hatches a plan on the spot and tells Pauline, "Congratulations, he's your responsibility now." And folks, now there is something you should know about this shelter. On paper, it's this wholesome charitable organization with warm beds for people with nowhere to go, funded by donations and government money. Very noble, very heartwarming. In reality, it's a straight-up money-squeezing machine that preys on desperate people, especially kids, under the cover of responsibility fees. So Pauline and Rowan, this brand new fake mother-son duo, gets sent out to beg on the streets every day just to pay for the privilege of sleeping there. Pauline introduces herself and asks the boy his name. He says nothing. He's still mentally back in that room, still seeing those bloody sheets, still trying to process the fact that yet another person in his life has just vanished. Pauline takes one look at his face and gets it immediately. So she sits down next to him and just starts talking. She tells him she doesn't know everything he's been through, but the past is behind him now. What matters is what comes next. Stay positive, keep pushing, and happiness will find its way to him eventually. Then she holds out her hand. Rowan takes it without hesitating. He plays the role of her son. They work the streets together, and what started as pure survival slowly turned into something completely real. Pauline kept the bullies away, stood between him and every piece of ugliness the streets had to offer, and made sure that even on the absolute worst days, he never felt truly alone. 5 years fly by, just like that. Rowan's 8 now, and the two of them are sitting together one evening reflecting on everything, the long days, the grind, and how far they'd actually come. But Rowan had caught a rumor that morning that had been sitting heavy in his chest all day. He asks her about it, still smiling, trying to play it cool. She nods and tells him how a noble household offered her a real maid position, actual pay, an actual roof, and an actual future. Rowan tells her he's happy for her, that she's going to be amazing, and he means every single word. But even as he's saying it, his eyes are already snitching on him, and before he can do anything about it, the tears are just coming down. Because it was his parents first, then Helen, and now Pauline. Everyone he's ever loved has left, and even though this time it's for something genuinely good, his heart doesn't really know how to tell the difference between being left and just being left. Pauline sees all of it written across his face and pulls him in close. Then she tells him something he's going to carry for the rest of his life. Being alone isn't about who's physically standing next to you. You're only truly alone if your heart feels empty. But as long as you hold on to the people you love, keep their memory alive, and feel how much they cared about you, they never actually leave. So whenever the loneliness starts creeping in, she says, just close your eyes, put your hand over your heart, and listen. She'll be right there. Cut to hours later, Pauline's gone, and now our boy is standing alone deep in the woods at night, turning her words over in his head. So he does exactly what she told him. Eyes closed, hand over his heart, just listening. And then something insane happens. Mana starts swirling around him out of nowhere. His eyes are still shut, but suddenly he can see not just the trees and the dark, but everything. Like the whole world just went transparent all at once. And somewhere inside that vision, he feels them. His parents, Helen, Pauline, every single person he ever loved, burning bright and close, like they'd been living inside him the whole time, just waiting for him to finally look. So years roll by after Pauline leaves, and Rowan hasn't heard a single word from her. He tells himself she's probably just swamped, adjusting to noble household life. New job, new rules, new everything. He prays she's doing okay and leaves it at that. What else is he supposed to do? In the meantime, he's back to what he knows, begging. Solo now, just like every other kid at Tungtun. But Rowan, he's good at this. Uncomfortably good. The director noticed pretty early that this kid pulls in more coin than literally anyone else in the operation, so he gets bumped up to Zone 1 prime real estate, the best foot traffic and the shelter's version of a corner office. Better spot, better treatment, and that's where he meets Blake. Blake runs Zone 1, and the second he heard about Rowan's background, the dead parents, Helen, all of it, he took the kid under his wing. Warm, always showing up at the right moment, and with zero ulterior motive as far as Rowan can tell. Blake is also the guy who finally put a name to what Rowan had been seeing since that night in the woods. Those swirling clusters of light weren't him losing his mind, they were mana. Well, I'm certain that you guys already know what mana is, so I'm going to skip past the boring details. The scene shifts, and our boy, sitting at his usual spot, bucket in front of him, is doing his thing. Some passersby toss in coins, and he thanks them with this genuine warmth. Not the fake, performative beggar gratitude, but the real kind that actually makes people feel good about themselves. A group of ladies walks past and immediately cannot handle how adorable this child is. Coins absolutely rain into that bucket, but Rowan is only half present. The other half of his brain is quietly running experiments. He's been working on something, trying to see both the physical world and the mana flowing through it at the same time, like keeping two completely different lenses focused simultaneously. The kind of thing that gives you a headache just thinking about. But today something clicks. He manages it, both layers crystal clear at once. He lets himself have exactly one small smile about it, because it genuinely was hard. The downside hits immediately. The holding both views at once leaves him dizzy and drained. Baby steps. Blake swings by, clocks the absolutely overflowing bucket, and raises an eyebrow. Rowan deflects with the humble beggar routine. It's really everyone else's generosity, not me. Blake doesn't fully buy it, but appreciates the attitude. He drops a warning before leaving. Success breeds jealousy, so if anything feels off, anything at all, Rowan should come to him immediately. One last wave, and he's gone. Here's the thing though. Something has already felt off, and Rowan didn't say a single word about it. Yesterday he spotted two men in the crowd. Nothing remarkable about how they looked, but their mana, impossibly bright and clean, condensed to the same degree as Blake's, but somehow even more so. And they were watching him and then just vanished, not by walking away but by jumping clean over buildings, gone between one blink and the next. Rowan turns this over in his head. They didn't feel exactly threatening, but they definitely weren't random. He decides to keep both the sighting and his mana vision ability to himself for now. Information is basically the only leverage a homeless 8-year-old has. He's not giving it away for free. His bucket's full, so he packs up and heads back to base camp for a replacement. Routine walk. Should be nothing. Except halfway down the street, he sees them again. Not just two this time, several of them spread out, positioned in the shadows. And this time they're not hanging back, they're moving with him. Closing distance, one behind him, one flanking his side, coordinated enough to make it crystal clear. This is not a coincidence. Rowan is 8 years old, completely alone, and being tailed by multiple highly capable mana users down a city street. His pulse kicks into overdrive, thoughts start fragmenting. All he has to do is make it to base camp. Just get there. The entrance is close. He just has to. And then he hears a familiar voice. Blake comes flying in. This man is moving at speeds that have no business being legal. Covering ground like physics is more of a loose suggestion to him. He scoops Rowan up without breaking stride, launches off the ground, and suddenly they're on a rooftop. Then the next one, then the next. The men below are keeping up because of course they are. So Blake cranks it up another gear and shouts at Rowan over the wind to hold on tight and critically not drop a single coin, because they need to eat tonight. Rowan doesn't respond. Blake glances down, expecting a completely terrified kid. Instead, Rowan has this totally vacant 1,000-yard stare going. Blake figures he's gone catatonic from fear, gets them back to the shelter, sets him down and talks him through it. You're safe, it's okay, go inside. Rowan walks inside. Blake watches, mildly confused, but Rowan wasn't frozen from fear at all. His brain had just detonated. The entire chase being thrown through the air, watching Blake move at full power had handed him something absolutely priceless. For the first time ever, he could see exactly how mana flows through a human body during movement. Not theoretically, visually. He watched it happen in real time, how condensed mana surges into the legs before a jump, how it floods the arms when strength is needed, and how many precise bursts it actually takes to clear a rooftop gap. He counted them, he cataloged every single one. So now, alone and safe inside, he decides to test whether he actually understood what he saw. He breathes in, draws the mana from the air, begins circulating it through his body, feeling where it flows naturally and where it pushes back. Then he starts to condense it, pulling it tight, getting it ready. And folks, this little boy wasn't supposed to try any of this yet, but this is how you know he's the real deal. So now that our boy got the basis down, it only makes sense that he's dying to try it out. But before he could do anything, all the other beggar kids started trickling back to the shelter, completely clueless about why they got called in. Then Rowan Sr. shows up and basically tells everyone to chill. Nothing serious, just some zone leaders doing an inspection. Go wait in your rooms and stay quiet. But there's one exception, Rowan. Him specifically, they tell to pack his bags because he's getting relocated. So the quiet little dude follows his senior through the shelter, walking a few steps behind like he always does, when suddenly his senior stops to have a private conversation with this big guy. Rowan's too far away to hear anything, but then he gets this idea: what if he pushed his mana into his ears? So he tries it, and boom, it actually works. Crystal clear audio from across the room, like he just put in AirPods. Turns out they're talking about him. Apparently he's getting moved out of the dorms and into the main building. Even his own senior has no idea why, but his best guess is that the director just likes the kid. And honestly, can you blame him? Dude's apparently pretty good looking for a shelter boy. Plus, after everything that went down in Zone 1, with those sketchy guys tailing him, it makes sense to keep him somewhere safer. His senior thinks those men might have been from something called the Union. We don't know what that is yet, but the way they said it, it's clearly a big deal. Robert connects the dots immediately. Those were the guys following him earlier today. Then the big guy waves Rowan over, and they head deeper into the main building until they reach this woman named Amy standing at the front counter. The big guy basically goes, "This is your person now, say hi," and then dips. Cue the awkward silence. Amy breaks it by asking how old he is. Rowan says 10, then he also just casually drops that he can't read or write and never had the chance to learn. Amy's not even surprised, she just goes, "Yeah, figured you're from the dorms." She tells him starting tomorrow she's teaching him everything so he can call her teacher, or big sister, if they're being casual. Then she looks at him properly for the first time and goes, "Damn, you're actually really handsome for a dorm kid. Man, this is unfair. This little kid is rizzing up baddies left and right." Rowan, completely unbothered, just asks, "Why do I even need to learn to read?" Amy's a little annoyed he doesn't already know why he's there, but she explains it. Reading events are basically these fancy gatherings, sometimes hosted by authors, sometimes by nobles, where a kid reads aloud to a crowd of important people. It's a big deal in upper-class circles, and this time Rowan's going to be performing at one of the shelter's big patron events. If he does well, he might even get picked for a private reading. And private readings, that's basically the fast track to getting adopted. Sponsors pick their favorites that way. For a kid who literally cannot read at all right now though. Yeah, no pressure. After this whole info dump, Rowan just stands there and bro has no reaction. Amy genuinely doesn't know what to make of him, but she gives him a little pat on the head anyway, and tells him to follow her. She shows him his new room and introduces him to the other kids. And when she leaves, Rowan starts unpacking into his very own personal closet. Something he's never had in his life. Right then, one of the boys walks up looking at him like he just saw a unicorn, genuinely shocked that this dude came from the dorms, but fascinated too. He introduces himself as Theo and goes down the lineup. The blonde girl is Noah, the middle kid is Hayden, and the quiet girl off to the side is Lily. Theo gives him the welcome speech. No bullying here, no more begging on the streets. The kids in this room handle the library, organizing books, helping guests, and keeping things running. And now that Rowan's part of the crew, they're genuinely happy to have him. Later that night, Rowan's lying in bed and his brain just won't shut off. He keeps thinking about books, about how every single thing anyone could ever want to know is probably sitting somewhere in a book. He thinks about Pauline, who always said books were the best thing you could give a curious kid. Just thinking about her fills him with this quiet, deep gratitude. Cut to the library, Zone 1. Rowan's been grinding through his reading practice, and Amy tells him to bring over everything he read that day. He drops this massive stack of books on the table, and she starts writing down all the titles. Then she stops and looks up every single book on this list is a fairy tale. She tells him to move on to Zone 2, the adult section, and throws in some genuine praise for how fast he's picking this up. Rowan is hyped. Zone 2? Adult books? He's practically speed-walking over there. He starts browsing the shelves, and honestly, every book looks interesting. He wants to read all of them immediately, but then one title stops him cold. The Birth of the Grafton Kingdom in the Union. The Union. He's heard that word before from adults in hushed tones. He opens it up, and the first thing he sees is a full map of the continent. Apparently, a region called Grafton won some massive war a long time ago, and after that the whole world got restructured. One kingdom, 6 self-governing regions. Then to make sure no one ever went to war again, the king created this organization called the Union. Been running for over 200 years. Peacekeepers. The good guys, supposedly. So now Rowan's confused. If the Union are the good guys, why did Blake run from them like his life depended on it? His first theory, maybe the Union cracks down on begging, and Blake was scared of getting in trouble. But that doesn't track either, because Blake had a totally normal relationship with the local supervisors. That theory's dead. Then a darker thought creeps in. What if the shelter and the Union aren't on good terms? And he's also curious as to why the shelter is keeping the events of that day a secret. So a few days go by, and Rowan's actually settled into his new routine pretty smoothly. His whole routine is basically showing up to the library, doing some light cleaning, and sneakily using mana to make all the physical work a little easier on himself. Now, here's the thing. Back when he was living on the streets, using mana required him to sit completely still like he was meditating for his life. But now, dude's casually circulating mana while walking around and reading at the same time. That's a massive glow-up. The only issue is his mana keeps scattering instead of actually gathering like it's supposed to, which is annoying, but Rowan's not the type to lose sleep over it. One step at a time. Then one day all the kids get rounded up in the main hallway. The vice director and Amy are up front, and without any small talk, the vice director starts reading off names for the next reading event. Theo, Lily, and Noah are all in. Cool. But when she hits Rowan's name, she actually pauses. Because let's be real, this kid just finished the fairy tale section, so putting him in front of important guests feels like a stretch. But then she actually looked at him and thought, okay, yeah, this boy is genuinely too pretty to leave in the back. His face alone would make the event look better. So instead of having him read, she told him he'd just be observing this time. Take in the atmosphere, learn the vibe. The kids who didn't make the cut at all were side-eyeing him hard, muttering about how it was unfair that the new guy who barely finished fairy tales got a spot just because of his face. Come event day, Rowan showed up in his nice clothes, and the whole room did a double take. Theo immediately hit him with a compliment. Rowan returned the favor, and then Amy walked him to his assigned seat. Once everyone was settled, there was a knock at the door and the VIP guests started filing in. And then one of those guests stopped dead in her tracks. She recognized him. This woman had seen Rowan before, back when he was out on the streets begging in the cold. Even then, she'd been completely taken by how striking he looked for a beggar kid. Rowan recognized her too and wasted no time thanking her for the money she'd given him back then. Her name was Caroline, and she was already his #1 fan before she even walked through the door. She immediately started gushing to the vice director, going on about how she'd spotted this beautiful boy at an intersection last winter, and now here he was, somehow looking even better than before. And when the vice director casually mentioned that Rowan had also just learned to read, Caroline lost it. She demanded he read something today, right now. The vice director tried to explain that he was only there to observe. Caroline was visibly disappointed, but seeing how hyped the guests were getting, the vice director caved and told Rowan to read the last chapter. What happened next, nobody was really prepared for. The second Rowan opened his mouth, the whole room went quiet. His voice had this rhythm to it, smooth, warm, almost hypnotic. The women in the audience were done for. Eyes getting watery, lips being bitten, hearts beating a little faster than normal. By the time he finished the passage, the room basically erupted with compliments. Every sweet word you could think of, these women were throwing at him. And Rowan? He stayed humble, redirected all the credit to the vice director and said none of it would have been possible without her, which made the women love him even more. Caroline immediately said she was coming back tomorrow to hear him read again. The vice director said yes without even blinking. Later that day, Rowan's back in the library doing his thing, browsing shelves, but this time specifically hunting for books about combining mana with physical movement. He's deep in the search when Blake creeps up behind him. Blake glances at the book in Rowan's hands and raises an eyebrow because the book Rowan grabbed is about life's pleasures. Rowan spins around and puts on this whole exaggerated startled reaction like Blake scared the life out of him. He didn't though. Rowan had sensed him coming from a mile away. Blake had stopped by to give him props for the reading event. Word had gotten around fast and Blake was genuinely bummed he missed it. Rosen told him not to sweat it. He knows Blake's out here handling actual responsibilities. Then Rosen asks if there's any update on the union situation. Blake says, yeah, those guys are causing trouble again, but he's planning to deal with them alongside the administrators. Rosen immediately tells him he's got full confidence in him. Those union guys are going to get exactly what's coming to them. And honestly, that hit different coming from Rosen. The kid just had that effect on people. Blake felt it. Blake mentions he probably won't make it to tomorrow's reading either, which is a bummer. Rosen tells him not to stress. There'll be plenty more chances. Then Rosen says something that catches Blake a little off guard, that he's more worried about Blake's safety than anything else, and to be careful out there. Blake wishes him luck back. Then on his way out, points at the book still in Rosen's hands and tells him he should definitely read that one, after the reading sessions of course. Then he's gone. Rosen stands there alone in the quiet library just thinking. He's genuinely curious what a fight between two people who've actually mastered mana control would look like. But more than that, he wants to know where he stands right now. What's his actual level? Could he even begin to compare to someone like Blake? He starts running mana through his body, just to get a feel for it, and then accidentally rips the book clean in half. The mana surged straight into his grip and cranked his strength way up with zero warning. Rowan looks down at the two halves of the book in his hands and goes, well, that answers that question. So we cut to Rowan getting summoned to the vice director's office, and the guy walks in with zero clue what's about to happen. The vice director's sitting there, clearly struggling to figure out how to even start this conversation. And then it all comes out. Turns out, our boy has completely cooked every other reader into irrelevance. Every single noble woman who's attended one of his sessions now refuses to listen to anyone else. Like, these women have been hounding the vice director so hard she's literally growing stressed gray hairs in real time. So now she's in the incredibly awkward position of having to sit across from a kid and basically beg him to carry her entire business on his back. Rowan doesn't even flinch, doesn't negotiate, doesn't ask for anything, just looks at her and goes, sure, I'll do it. But then comes the twist. The vice director walks out and makes the big special reader announcement, and everyone's already mentally filling in Rowan's name. She calls Theo instead. The whole room does a hard freeze. Theo himself starts stuttering because he genuinely cannot process that he got picked. The vice director congratulates him and sends him off. And even Theo, sweet, humble Theo, pulls Rowan aside before he leaves and goes, bro, your reading is on a completely different level. You're going somewhere incredible, which is genuinely wholesome, but also kind of just confirms that everybody in the building knows exactly what's happening here. Rowan watches him walk off and feels this little pang in his chest. Not jealousy, more like he's going to miss the guy. But that feeling gets about 30 seconds of airtime before Rowan's right back in the reading room, absolutely demolishing these noble women with his voice again. And speaking of shifts, the vice director pulls him aside again to break the news that he's now on double duty. Morning and afternoon sessions. She clearly feels bad about it. You can see it on her face, but the demand has gotten completely out of hand. Now any other person would start negotiating or at least complaining a little. Robert, he sees it as an opportunity. Genuinely feels grateful that people want to hear him that badly. The only thing he asks for is short breaks between sessions because the emotional output drains him every single time. The vice director, who physically cannot say no to this kid, agrees immediately, just tells him not to wander past the backyard. Robert takes the win and heads outside. The second he gets some peace and quiet, he's straight back to mana experiments. He's running through everything he read in that book, starting with focusing mana on specific spots, muscles, joints, and bones, and then slowly letting it spread through his whole body like a current. And here's the key thing he's unlocked. Mana doesn't respond to passive thought. It needs a direct command behind it. Actual willpower, not just a polite suggestion. When he gets the execution right, his whole body lights up. When it fades, he still keeps hitting this wall with his concentration. And he's not sure yet whether the problem is his technique or something deeper with his body. But he's not rushing it. He'd rather build the foundation right than burn himself out the way he's watched everyone else do. That thought pulls him back to the memory of Blake literally having to carry him to the shelter because his legs gave out completely. He figures the Union guys probably got sick of chasing him at some point, which is at least one less problem on his plate. But something else has been quietly nagging at him. He's noticed that even people who are actually skilled with mana can drain themselves completely if they push too hard, which gets his brain going. What if there's a way to tap into stored mana, or better yet, pull from the ambient mana already floating around in the environment and use it like it's your own? And then it hits him. He's already kind of been doing this. When he channels mana into his voice and projects it outward, that's essentially the same mechanic. If he can figure out how to shape external mana the same way he shapes his own, the ceiling on what he can do is basically gone. He keeps poking at the theory out in the garden, and then lightbulb moment, a single leaf lifts off the ground and just hovers in the air, just floating there, suspended, doing absolutely nothing, and somehow being the most incredible thing Rowan's ever seen. Our boy just invented something. Cut to the next special reader announcement. This time, it's Lily. Everyone applauds. The vice director does her usual send-off, a standard routine. Except Lily isn't moving. She's standing there completely flustered, staring at Rowan, visibly trying to summon the courage to say literally anything. She starts stuttering, and it becomes very, very obvious this girl is about to confess. But before she can get a single coherent word out, the other kids in the room start talking over everything loudly about how baffled they are that Rowan got passed over again. Because at this point, they've all done the math. The man is a cash cow, the vice director knows it, and she's keeping him here on purpose. The whole room explodes in chatter, and Lily's entire moment just gets steamrolled into nothing. Rowan, noticing she said something, turns to her and asks her to repeat it. Lily, who has completely lost her window, just walks away crying. Meanwhile, Rowan has already mentally moved on, because his brain is doing what it always does and sprinting off somewhere else entirely. He's thinking about how every special reader ends up placed with a good family, which means leaving the shelter, new environments, new people, and new experiences. And more than anything, more exposure to the world, more chances to learn, more data on mana storage. The curiosity is genuinely eating at him now. The next day, at break time, he's back in the garden doing the leaf levitation again, and it's noticeably easier this time. Practice is working. Then completely out of nowhere, he picks up on a purple mana trail nearby and spots a man trying to slip onto the shelter grounds. Robert recognizes him. It's the big guy who first brought him to the main building way back when, and then the big guy just drops. His mana flickers out like a candle. Another man rushes over immediately, and the two of them start talking in urgent, hushed voices. Robert catches just enough to make out one word, Union. Before he can even begin to process what he just witnessed, someone quietly tells him to go back inside, act completely normal, and pretend he saw nothing. Robert walks back in, still half frozen, running through what just happened and coming up with absolutely no answers. Then things get stranger. The afternoon reading session gets canceled, and all the kids are told to go straight to their rooms. Everyone is confused, wondering what the hell is going on, before anyone could figure out anything. Amy came to find our boy and told him to pack his stuff because he's the special reader today. So we cut back to Rowan getting ready, and already something feels off. Amy's entire energy has done a complete 180. That warm, familiar vibe she usually has with him evaporated. She's cold, flat, and serious, and it's putting him on edge in a way he can't quite shake. He's also still turning over those two guys from earlier in his head, and the whole Union mention, and his gut is screaming that all of it is connected to why the afternoon session got canceled without so much as an explanation. He heads out and finds Amy already waiting, dressed up, ready to go, and with zero small talk. She glances at his outfit, and there's this tiny flicker across her face, like she almost said something, but then she just tells him to follow her and starts walking. Rowan asks if he's being taken to Caroline, which honestly would have been a best-case scenario. Amy doesn't answer, she just walks. Somehow that's worse than a no. They don't go anywhere, he recognizes. Instead, they head towards something called the Annex, a completely separate relief shelter, and the moment Rowan lays eyes on it, his whole body goes stiff. The place is dark, oppressive, and radiating pure bad vibes. And it's not just a feeling either. He can actually sense it. The mana inside that building is wrong. Everyone in there is carrying something heavy, something suspicious. The big guy escorts him in like time is a concern, and Rowan steals one last look at Amy's face before they step through the door, and he immediately senses that something is off. And yep, this place is sus as hell. Like no windows, darker than expected, and Rowan makes a quiet decision right then and there. He is not dropping his guard for a single second, and immediately uses his mana sense. Then he hears the vice director's voice somewhere deeper in the building. They walk him into this hall that looks less like a room and more like a ritual altar, and before he can even get a read on the situation, he's told to sit down and read. Rowan clocks the specific book they want him on, and then his eyes drift to the massive pit in the center of the room, this deep dark hole that descends way further down than it has any business doing. He stares at it, and then it hits him. That's not just a pit. That thing is absolutely loaded with mana, more than he's ever felt concentrated in one place. Dark mana. He starts reading anyway. Poetic, atmospheric, the kind of passage that perfectly matches the suffocating energy of the room. And as the words leave his mouth, he can feel it. The dark mana in the pit is responding, gathering, and pulling toward him. The emotion slams into him like a wave, uncontrollable, and his whole reading style shifts darker, without him even trying. But then the second thing hits him, and this one is a problem. The pit isn't feeding him. He's feeding the pit. His mana is getting drained with every single word, his body getting weaker sentence by sentence. He can't stop though, and he knows it. If he stops now, the shelter gets exposed and the Union moves in. So he endures it and immediately starts building a plan. Absorb the external mana around him and redirect the flow to protect himself. And it actually works. So now our boy's in full control. He even feels a little relief wash over him. Now he can keep reading without getting drained, and use his mana detection the second any Union members show up. So he buys time on purpose, dragging the reading out. The people who set this whole thing up are getting antsy though. The ritual should have wrapped by now. They decide someone needs to go check on what's taking so long. Rowan already knows they're coming, but then something completely unexpected happens. Instead of coming toward him, the shelter people burst into the room and go underground, straight into the pit. Rowan watches them disappear below and thinks, what the hell is actually being fed down there? The scene cuts to the housemaster getting slapped clean across the face. The vice director grabs him. The guy running the ritual is furious, convinced they tried to bail on the whole operation. Meanwhile, our boy drops down the pit, and his entire world cracks open right there. Real people were sacrificed for this ritual. He's still trying to process that horror, when he spots a familiar face among them. Pauline, and then the angry guy from before clocks Rowan standing there. At the same time, Blake comes storming in demanding answers. Why are the director and vice director dead? This bastard replies that he killed them because they tried to run. That's when they found a strange fruit on the tree. Rama was brought here to create one more fruit, but the process failed and nobody knows why. Blake looks frustrated, processing all of it, and then pulls his sword out of Pauline's body. Meanwhile, our boy was standing there completely still, like a statue, because now he remembers. He'd asked Blake once why he never carried a sword. Blake told him his weapon was being used somewhere else, and it is now that this bastard realized what went down and bro lost it like he went full-on mob psycho, 100% absolute rage. So now that our boy has lost it, he makes the first right decision so far and absolutely murders the guy standing next to him, and then he starts walking toward Blake, and this idiot finally realizes that he's miscalculated, because this 10-year-old is radiating this terrifying dark aura that makes absolutely no sense for someone his age. Blake didn't even get to finish his little villain monologue before Rowan blitzed him with a speed and force that had no business coming from a child. But then the fight just stops for a second, because Rowan's attention snaps to the tree, the dead, horrible, cursed tree, and he just starts crying like he absolutely loses it. Then he pushes his own mana into the tree and dives into the memories trapped inside it, and what he sees is brutal. Terrified children, helpless people, all of them are gone, and then buried in all that horror, he sees something unexpected, an older version of himself, like a fully grown Ronan staring back at him. Before he can process any of that, the memory sequence cuts off. Ronan's yanked back out, left with more questions than answers, but something shifted inside him. It feels like he reconnected with a woman he thought he'd lost forever. And riding along with that feeling is Pauline's voice. He remembered what she had told him about how he's only truly alone when his heart is empty. That as long as he holds on to the people he loved, they never really leave. That love isn't something you can see, it's something you feel. And even though the memories themselves might fade, the love stays. It lives in his heart permanently. And then, just like that, he's back. Blake has a sword pressed to his throat. This smug bastard tells Rowan he was kind enough to wait while the boy had his little emotional moment, and that he always knew Rowan was sharp. His subordinates messed up the original plan, sure, but now he's curious, so he gives the kid a choice. Come with him, or die quietly, right here, right now. Rohan, who's already planned in his head that this bastard is dying, asks where they'd be going. Blake explains there's another farm, another tree. Rohan would tend to it. Blake would manage him and officially welcome to the Lutel. Now, if you're wondering what the Lutel is, it's basically a cult run by some fanatic who thinks dark magic is the key to changing the world. Blake is just an errand boy for this guy, a loyal little servant. That's when Rune asks the question in the coldest possible tone, his eyes completely empty, whether Blake was the one who built the tree. Blake says no, he doesn't have that kind of power. That's high priest work. He just observes, Anyway, Blake's done talking. He wants an answer. Like, bro, did you really need to ask that? You killed the woman who was basically his mom, so obviously Rowan hit him with a hard no. And this bastard doesn't waste a single second and goes straight for the kill. And I want you to really sit with this for a second. This is the same man who treated Rowan like a little brother. I personally expected at least a moment of hesitation, but no. He genuinely tried to kill this child without blinking, except Rowan catches the blade with 2 fingers, using external mana control so precise it makes Blake's brain short-circuit. Then Rowan quietly asks if Blake was the one who killed Pauline. Blake, still somehow being arrogant about this, asks if Rowan wants revenge. Rowan snaps the sword in half and tells him he won't live to see tomorrow. And look, that line is cold on its own. But it hits different when you remember. This is a grieving 10-year-old who just lost the closest thing he had to a mother. Then our boy hits him with a magical sucker punch, and now this bastard is on the ground. Then, without another word, Rowan cuts him in 2. Now that he's finally done, his senses tingle as he picks up a group incoming. Sure enough, a whole squad comes rolling in, ready to sweep the area and presumably judge everything they find. Leading the pack is Oscar, vice captain of the Union's Faith Division, who spots Rowan immediately and cuts straight to it. Is this kid using telekinesis? Rowan blinks like he just asked something deeply personal. Oscar rephrases, did the Lutel teach him? You know the thing, the magic stuff. Rowan says no, he figured it out himself. Oscar almost chokes because that is genuinely the most unhinged thing he's ever heard come out of a child's mouth. And he has heard things, but the kid isn't lying. Oscar can tell, which makes it so much worse. They get to talking, and Rowan proceeds to absolutely work Oscar over. He clocks his rank just from his badge. He casually drops knowledge about the Faith Division's recon operations. Then he shows off his telekinetic abilities, and one of Oscar's subordinates visibly has to collect themselves because they were not prepared for that. One of his men pulls Oscar aside to whisper that the tree was grown less than 2 years ago, and the binding spell has been undone, though Oscar notes that any high priest would have left mana traces behind, unless it was Father Sion. Meanwhile, Rowan is just staring at the tree, at the house, at lilies, quietly marinating in the guilt of not being kinder to them when he had the chance. He asks Oscar how many trees like this he's come across on his missions, essentially asking, how deep does this go? How big is this thing? Oscar answers, but he's watching Rowan the whole time, because a normal kid in this situation would be losing it, crying, shaking, completely coming apart at the seams. But this one, he's different. He's focused, controlled, and already knows what he wants to do next. Rowan asks to join the Faith Division. Oscar figures the kid is in shock and just incredibly good at hiding it, better than most adults, honestly. He tells him they'll run a special investigation first, before anything gets decided, and tells him to follow. As Rowan walks away from it all, the tree, the bodies, the whole grim scene, his eye catches something on the dead vice director's body. A single coin just sitting there unclaimed. He pockets it without breaking stride. So we cut to outside the building, and one of Oscar's guys is giving the official damage report, and this is the gist of it. The Faith Division came out totally unscathed. As for the body count, 13 dead from the cult side, 3 from the shelter. As for suspects, they've narrowed it down to 2 people, and one of them is apparently Amy. Oh, and the high priests and the big shots of the Lutel group? Turns out they only set up the ritual space, they didn't actually break it. So the investigation's still ongoing because nobody can figure out how the whole thing collapsed in the first place. With the report done, Oscar turns to Rowan and asks where the kid feels most comfortable. Rowan says the library, and because Oscar's actually a decent human being, he's like, alright, library it is, led the way. In the next scene, they're both sitting in the library having a proper conversation. Oscar kicks things off by pointing out that even here, surrounded by books, there isn't a single one about mana cultivation. So he's dying to know how exactly did this kid teach himself magic. Rowan's like, I'm smart, I just figured it out, and seeing the confidence even Oscar, a grown adult professional, had to admit, yeah, this kid's probably telling the truth, and yeah, he's probably incredibly gifted. Still, he needed to hear Rowan's full account of everything that went down. So Rowan walks him through it all, starting from the very first moment he arrived at the shelter, all the way to his conclusion that Pauline was most likely the one who passed her abilities on to him. After hearing the whole story, Oscar's still sitting there with a ton of questions because nothing about this kid adds up, like Rowan has 0 mana training, 0, and yet he managed to kill 2 members of a Lutel organization, one of whom was Blake, a skilled swordsman. Not only that, but he also somehow shattered a high priest ritual, which is not something you just stumble into doing. On top of all that, the kid's using telekinesis without saying a single magic word, which apparently isn't normal, and to top it all off, he doesn't even look tired. This boy just casually rewrote the rules of magic and didn't even break a sweat. Rowan, meanwhile, is curious about the tree and wants to know what it actually was. Oscar gives him the full breakdown in simple terms. It's a ritual device created by the Lutels specifically to harvest human life. The whole point is to produce a fruit made from condensed life energy, basically solidified mana in physical form, which makes it insanely valuable on the black market. The fruit gets consumed, and whoever eats it gets a straight-up boost to their mana capacity. As for why reading was involved in the ritual, specific conditions have to be met to stabilize the tree and improve the fruit's quality. Reading aloud apparently does exactly that. Robert immediately connects the dots. He remembers how the tree seemed engaged with his story, almost like it was listening. That's why it stabilized the reading was working. And then he takes it a step further, and realizes before these things were trees, they were actual human beings. Oscar is genuinely impressed. That's exactly what he'd concluded too, and this 10-year-old just got there on his own. Then Rowan asks what telekinesis actually means, because he keeps hearing the word. Oscar explains it's a type of magic that lets you move objects using mana. Rowan demonstrates it right there, and it finally clicks for him. He's been using magic this whole time without even knowing it. Dude had no idea. Oscar notes that while it's still at a beginner level, the fact that a kid his age is pulling this off at all is remarkable. Now Oscar remembers something. Rowan mentioned wanting to join the Faith Division, and after everything the boy just went through being betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect him, Oscar genuinely wants to understand why. The Faith Division and the Union are the same organization, just different names, so it's not a small commitment. Robert's honest about it. He doesn't fully trust the Faith Division yet, but his gut tells him Oscar's a good person. He can feel it in his mana. Oscar's a little thrown off hearing a 10-year-old describe him as pure, and he tells the kid that trusting people based on vibes alone could seriously get him killed someday. Robert pushes back saying he's good at reading people, but Oscar shuts it down gently. It's not that simple. Getting a child involved in their operations isn't something he can just greenlight. Robert starts to wonder if he's too weak, too inexperienced. But Oscar stops him and tells him to listen carefully in life. Raw talent isn't everything. His tone goes serious, and Robert's mood drops immediately. Sulking mode activated. Oscar clarifies nothing is wrong with Rowan. The problem is making exceptions for outsiders is complicated, and the kid is very young. Robert, not missing a beat, asks the obvious question. Is age really more important than actual ability? That lands. Oscar pauses, because the honest answer is, Robert did just take down 2 grown men. The talent is real, but the Union, frustratingly, measures experience by age, not skill. Oscar admits it. Rana asks if that means he's too immature for them. And that's when Oscar decides to give the kid a real shot. He reframes the whole conversation as a practice interview and starts asking real questions. First one, why did Ron kill Edgar? Edgar wasn't an immediate threat at the time. Ron answers without hesitation. Edgar had already killed the shelter owner and his wife. The pattern was obvious. Hesitating would have just meant Ron was next. Oscar acknowledges that point but pushes further. The boy still killed 2 people. Emotions could have clouded his judgment. Ron agrees that yeah, his emotions were part of it, and he's not ashamed of that. But he also argues that emotions don't always screw with your thinking. Sometimes they make things clearer. In his judgment, the men in front of him had taken multiple innocent lives. There was nothing to redeem, no reason to spare them. And if he had the power to deliver justice in that moment, that's exactly what he did. Oscar asks the big one, did Ron have the right to kill them? Ron says it was the fairest outcome given everything. He had the power and he used it, but he's not hiding from it either. He knows he killed someone. He's not making excuses, just owning it. Oscar pushes one more time. Was it really necessary? And Rowan, without thinking for a second, said, yep, it was absolutely necessary. There are people whose entire job is carrying out executions. Then he looks Oscar dead in the eyes and says, that's what the Union does too. And for a second, Oscar just stares at him, because the kid's right. He takes a moment to explain what the Union truly stands for. Yes, they carry out justice, but at their core, their goal is a world full of happiness and laughter, a world that's safe, peaceful, and stable for every generation that comes after. It's an impossible ideal. They know they'll never fully reach it, but it's the goal they chase regardless. That's the Union's real purpose. And the fact that Rowan at 10 years old somehow already gets that, Oscar's impressed. Genuinely, he tells Rowan about an organization called the Grave, a powerful, shadowy group threatening the entire kingdom. The cult they just dealt with is just one branch of it. The Union's first division has been working to dismantle the Grave piece by piece, and Oscar believes that with Rowan's help, they might actually be able to finish the job. Rowan's confused about where he fits in, so Oscar lays it out plainly. Rowan comes to the Union, proves himself, and earns his spot. Simple as that. Until then, Oscar just wants the kid to live up to his own potential. Meeting over outside, Oscar addresses his team. He announces that the Tungtun Shelter's involvement in aiding the Grave has been confirmed and dealt with. The Union succeeded. The darkness in this area has been eliminated. The shelter will return to normal operations. Then he gives the signal, and the division starts to move out. Before he goes, Oscar calls over this 10-on-10 elf baddie Sienna. She walks in, and our boy is immediately surprised because she's radiating waves of blue mana like she's practically glowing. Oscar fills her in and tells her to get Rowan to the Union safely. Man, what mad luck this guy has makes grown men want to sell their soul, their grandmother, and their neighbor's cat just to swap places with a 10-year-old. Sienna introduces herself. Pillar of faith, 2-week journey, pack anything important, all business, tone sharp and practiced. Rowan has nothing to pack. She raises an eyebrow, gives him one last chance, then opens it up for questions like she's daring him to waste her time. Raud immediately asks about her race. Dark elf? Then because he has absolutely no filter, he blurts out that he expected dark elves to have a much darker aura because hers is bright. Radiant even. Sienna looks at him the way you look at something you can't quite categorize. She tells him it's probably his bloodline affecting his perception, and leaves it firmly at that. Oscar says his goodbyes, and in true Rauden fashion, the kid turns to the rest of the team and sincerely tells them to stay safe. The whole team goes quiet like it's not the sort of things these guys are used to. The scene shifts and Round and Sienna are setting up camp in the middle of nowhere. Then Sienna pulls out this little handcrafted sheath she's been working on in the background and hands it over to our boy. Round gets so emotional he immediately goes into full respectful mode, addressing her like she's actual royalty or something. Sienna's like, yeah, no, cut that out. But calling her big sister felt weird too, so after thinking for a second, Round just settles on Sienna since they're going to be working together anyway. It's such an awkward, wholesome solution that Sienna has to literally turn around to hide how much it got to her. A dark elf assassin getting flustered by a kid? Then Rowan starts messing around with his telekinesis, making his broken blade spin in the air, and Sienna's just watching like, what the hell even is this power? Rowan mentions the vice captain called it telekinetic magic, and Sienna's like, yeah, sure, the closest thing we've got, but honestly that word doesn't really do it justice. Rowan's confused, so she breaks it down. His magic is legitimately one of a kind. Most mages need to chant spells, draw magic circles, and do the whole song and dance just to touch mana. This kid, he just does it. No instructions, no training wheels, nothing. She tells him that kind of raw mana control is something only the ancient elves had, the OG elves from before the race split into dark elves, high elves, and all that. Then she looks him dead in the eyes and tells him just from his eye color alone she knows his parents were absolutely not normal people. That one hits different. Rowan goes quiet, thinking about them. The next day they show up to the Union, and bro, this place is not what Rowan expected. It's basically an entire city. Sienna's giving him the grand tour, explaining there's a residential district and a commercial district, but the real flex isn't the buildings, it's the people. Every single race on the continent comes here. The strongest warriors and mages in the world have literally set up shop here specifically to protect regular people from psychos like the Grave. That's why they call it the sword and book of the continent. It's got the muscle and the brains. Raman's absorbing all of this like a sponge, eyes wide, mentally filing everything away. Then they get intercepted. This dude named Lazarus, director of the Union's management department, shows up and immediately locks onto Raman, and immediately he pulls him aside for a private chat, and they end up in this room that is aggressively bright, almost suspiciously so. Raman mentally flags that immediately because this kid notices everything. Now Raman already knows this place is where all the heavy hitters gather, but what really tips him off about Lazarus is his aura. It's not flashy or intimidating, it's perfectly controlled. Not a single drop wasted, and somehow that's way more impressive than any big showy display. Raman starts quietly calculating just how strong this guy actually is. Then Lazarus does something unexpected. He politely asks for Rowan's hand and holds it with both of his, and the second he does, Rowan feels it. This man is doing the exact same mana control thing Rowan does, except on a completely different level. Like if Rowan's been drawing stick figures, this guy's out here painting the damn Sistine Chapel. Instead of being scared, Rowan's hyped. He didn't know other people could do this. He didn't know it could even go this far. Man's practically vibrating with excitement. Then Lazarus's eyes slide over to the coin hanging off Rowan, the one he took from the deputy director. Before the man can even ask, Rowan sets the record straight. He didn't steal it. It was his grandma's. He just took back what was already his. Lazarus asks to see the emblem on it, and here's where shit gets interesting. He asks nicely, but Rowan's body just straight up doesn't move. He tries to pull his hand back, Catan. Tries to shift his weight, Catan. Lazarus has basically stitched their mana together, locking him in place without making a single aggressive move. It's the most polite prison cell Rowan's ever been in. So Rowan thinks it through in real time. If he can handle the gravity pressure and the mana pressure at the same time, maybe he can slip out. He tries it, and he actually pulls it off. Lazarus looks genuinely impressed, but Rowan's already annoyed with himself because all he really did was copy the director's own technique back at him. Nothing original, except Lazarus noticed that too, and he's even more impressed because of it. Lazarus examines the emblem, and for the first time, his perfect mana control flickers. Just for a split second, Rowan catches it instantly. The director thanks him genuinely, not just out of politeness for showing him something he'd been wondering about for a long time. Rowan, still curious, just straight up asks, "Are you the strongest person in the Union?" Lazarus laughs and waves it off, calling himself just an old raccoon helping the next generation. Rowan takes that completely literally and misses the joke entirely, which is very on brand for him. But Lazarus answers honestly, the 17 captains are terrifying. The commander above them is on another level entirely. And then there's the governor and top brass above even that. Compared to those people, yeah, the raccoon checks out. Ronan asks if he can come back with more questions sometime. Lazarus tells him, sure, just book an appointment. As they wrap up, Ronan mentally files Lazarus under two categories, good and strong. High praise coming from this kid. He walks out feeling solid, like coming to the Union was the right move, and then he sees his new home, the Union Academy. Sienna explains it's where Union members send their kids when they're away on long missions, which basically makes it a school full of kids who grew up in this life. It's not specialized. It covers swordsmanship, magic, martial arts, all of it. Building students up from the ground up. The idea is 5 years here could turn Ronan into something genuinely terrifying. The second she mentions school, something in Ronan just lights up. Cut to the next day, and our boy's looking fresh in his new uniform, dripped out and ready to learn. He asks the woman if she's a teacher, and she's like, oh shit, I forgot to introduce myself properly. It turns out she's Daphne, the head of academic affairs and a language teacher. Basically, she's kind of a big deal. She hands him the first-year class schedule with a list of elective subjects he can pick from. And bro, the options are stacked: mana manipulation, swordsmanship, astronomy, all kinds of cool shit. Our boy looks at this menu of knowledge, and his eyes light up. So what does he do? He checks every single box. When Daphne gets the paper back, her jaw hits the floor. She's like, "Kid, are you insane? This workload would break most students. If you fail even one of these classes, you're cooked." But our boy's sitting there like, what's the problem? Because he genuinely doesn't understand why anyone would find studying difficult. Daphne's looking at him like he's an alien, because what kind of child wants to study everything? Most kids would rather eat dirt than do homework, but this little psychopath is built different. She's trying to warn him about the insane amount of homework he'll have, but he's not budging. Finally, she just gives up and accepts his list, probably thinking, you know what? Let him learn the hard way. She tells him to follow her to his first class. In the next scene, our boy walks into the classroom behind Daphne, and his eyes are darting everywhere, taking it all in. He immediately notices something important. Every kid in this room has way denser mana than he does. This confirms what he already suspected. His body is the problem, not his ability. Anyway, Daphne introduces him as the late transfer student and gives him the floor. Rowan steps up to introduce himself, and he's getting flashbacks to those reading sessions at the shelter, so this feels familiar. He gives this polite, wholesome introduction about hoping to get along with everyone. And bro, his voice, this kid's voice is so smooth and sincere that it literally touches the teacher's heart. Look at this little bastard already rizzing up the teacher. Once our boy takes his seat, the class begins. Daphne tells everyone to turn to page 24 and asks Rowan to read, since she knows he learned how back at the shelter. He opens the book and immediately recognizes it. It's the same damn book Amy used to test him with. His mind flashes back to the shelter where he was reading beautifully with this elegant-ass tone that had everyone mesmerized, but now he's feeling some type of way because Amy, the girl who taught him, turned out to be part of the Lutul group that betrayed him. Still, our boy's mature for his age. He's thinking maybe he should give her a chance to explain herself because he doesn't actually know her side of the story yet. In his head, he's like, people are way more complicated than textbooks, which is some deep shit for a kid to be thinking. By the time he finishes reading the passage, the entire class erupts in applause. Even the teacher is gushing about how talented he is, praising the school for snagging such a gifted student. After class, some kids come up to him like, yo, you're insane. Daphne never gets impressed by students, but you had her shook. Our boy's collecting fans left and right, but then this short-haired girl with green eyes approaches him. The moment he sees her, something clicks. He recognizes her from that vision he had earlier. She introduces herself as Sophie Paulbel, the class president and student representative. They shake hands and she asks what elective he picked. He mentions swordsmanship, and she notices he only has a tiny dagger on him. So she's like, oh, are you trying to join the union? Rowan's confused because he literally just wanted to study everything. He wasn't thinking about the union at all. But now he's curious, so he asks if you need swordsmanship to join. Sophie gives him this weird look like, bro, are you serious right now? Which makes him wonder if he just said something dumb. In the next scene, all the students show up at the training grounds where the instructor is waiting. Suddenly, everyone just bolts toward the instructor, and our boy's standing there like, what the hell? They yell back at him, we're going ahead. But that's not even the wild part. The wild part is that they're all using mana to boost their speed. Rowan's eyes light up because now he gets it. Oh, we're doing this? But he activates his own mana and zooms past every single student despite starting way behind them. Even Sophie is watching this shit unfold like, this kid is not normal. She can tell his speed is unnatural because he's making it look too easy. Meanwhile, our boy doesn't care about the race or winning it. He's having the time of his life, laughing and challenging everyone to catch him. All this commotion caught the instructor's eyes. He turns around and sees this tiny kid is flying across the training ground, and he's thinking, I need to keep an eye on this one. A few moments later, the race ends. Everyone's gasping for air, cursing whoever thought this was a good idea. Meanwhile, our boy's chilling. They all gather for assembly, and Rowan's just happy he found people who can use mana like him. Meanwhile, Sophie's having an existential crisis, thinking, is this kid even human? The way he accelerated, the way he lapped everyone, and the fact that he's not even tired? She's convinced he might be a demon. Rowan notices her staring and cheerfully asks, did you enjoy the race? Sophie's internally screaming, like, this little demon just dunked on all of us and has the audacity to ask if we had fun. After everyone catches their breath, the instructor finally introduces himself as Diego Sanchez, a swordsmanship master and their teacher for this class. Our boy's hyped as hell to learn from this guy. Diego tells everyone to grab a wooden sword, and you can see the pain on these kids' faces because they're still exhausted from that death race earlier. But here's the thing, Rowan's just standing there frozen. Diego's like, kid, move your ass. But our boy's hesitating, looking at that wooden sword like it's about to bite him. He's having PTSD flashbacks of Blake, and Diego immediately picks up on it. The instructor can see the fear in his eyes, so he drops some wisdom on him. Look, a sword can be dangerous, sure, but at the end of the day, it's just a tool. The sword doesn't have intentions. It reveals the character of the person holding it. That's why you need to face this fear, and damn, that actually hit different for our boy. He has this realization moment, like, wait, if Blake had beaten my ass with a staff instead, would I be scared of staffs right now? He figures out that swords aren't the problem, the person wielding them is, so he walks up and grabs the blade, thinking to himself that he doesn't need to become some legendary swordmaster, but he also shouldn't be running away from this shit. Diego watches him pick up the sword and immediately notices two things. The kid has natural talent in how he holds it, but he's lacking in willpower. The instructor announces they're doing sparring matches in pairs, and any fighting method is cool as long as you beat your opponent. Then Diego drops the bomb. Rowan's paired up with Sophie. Both of them are like, wait, what? And the other kids are already placing bets, saying Sophie's going to destroy him because she comes from a prestigious sword family and has actual training. The teacher gives them the signal to get ready, and the match begins. Sophie takes this wide stance with her sword, looking all professional and shit, eyeing our boy down like a hawk. Rowan's standing there thinking, huh, so this is what real swordsmanship looks like. He's actually impressed by how she controls her weapon. It feels completely different from the terrifying experience he had with Blake. He's adjusting his own blade, wondering what good swordsmanship even means, when he naturally falls into his own stance. The second he does this, both Diego's and Sophie's eyes go wide. This kid just pulled off a perfect neutral stance on his first try. Like it's nothing. It's the kind of thing that should be impossible for a beginner. But here we are. Sophie's shook, but she's not about to lose, because her family's pride is on the line. She charges in with her first attack, fully committed. Rowan dodges, Sophie swings again. He dodges, she aims for his chest. He's already moving out of the way. She tries a different angle. Nope. He saw that coming too. She's getting increasingly frustrated because this boy is reading her like an open book, dodging and blocking every single move she makes. It's like he can see the future or some shit. Eventually, Sophie's being pushed backward, completely on the defensive, and she's mentally breaking down because her cautious opponent has predicted her every move. Finally, she admits defeat and asks for a rematch. Our boy smiles and agrees. After everything's done, they end up talking for a while, and Sophie's genuinely impressed by his natural talent. Turns out they fought 4 times total, and they split it 2-2. Sophie's actually excited now, thinking she finally found someone worth sparring with regularly. The other students are hyped because the next class is magic, which means they can finally sit down and rest. But Rowan's confused, asking, isn't this supposed to be one of the most important classes for joining the union? Everyone just stares at him like he grew a second head. One kid's like, bro, our teacher is so far above our level that it's basically impossible to learn anything from him. Rowan's like, I mean, learning magic is hard, but how bad can the teacher be? At this point, the other students are realizing this kid knows nothing about common knowledge.